Hello and welcome everybody to the course Crystal Engineering Chemistry Beyond the Molecule. We have seen in all these videos and all the slides, crystal engineering is a really broad field of different parameters, interplays of interactions and crystallization techniques. And today I will show you some additionally fields in crystal engineering. We will start with ionic co-crystals. Here you see the ionic co-crystals, for example, of salt, sodium chloride and urea. It was first synthesized a long time ago. You see it here, 1783. Yes. What he has seen that the habit of a crystal of sodium chloride, salt crystals, change by crystallization from water in the presence of urea. And well, the crystal structure was determined really nearly about 200 years later. And another example, for examples, in the middle of the 19th century, they found mixture of carboxylic acid with the salt, carboxylic salts. No? For example, if we crystallize, cooling, from an alcohol solution and containing potassium, hydrogen benzoate and the benzoic acid, we got a crystal with the salt and the acid inside. Yeah? And once again you see 200 years later we were able to determine the crystal structure. Well, okay, let's talk about this class of crystals. No? First of all, they include acid salts, as a co-crystal, exactly what we found in the middle of the 19th, and conjugate acid-base co-crystals. Yes, there's a definition of acid salts from Speakman. And first you see the two types, and the difference is only the localization of a hydrogen. Here type A, the hydrogen is exactly in the middle, so it's shared between the carboxylates. And here in this case, this is strongly located in one position. Okay, this is a classification for acid salts. Well, why are we talking about it? Because they are helpful and they are used, for example, in pharmaceutical industry. Have a look here. Yeah? If you look to theophylline, this is this one, and the salt of the sodium glycinate. Why? Because, let's have a look on the properties. First of all, if you look to the mixture, it has similar properties of the API of a theophylline. No? On the other side, if you look to LD50, LD50 values, you see very nicely there's an increase. It's less toxic in contrast to the poor API. You see, ionic co-crystal can improve the properties. And what was the reason? For example, that in the 70s, you see it here, a patent filed in 1971 claimed 56 of ionic co-crystals formed by free isothiocyanone, this compound here, and metal halides as metal salt complexes, and reported the improved properties like thermal stability, for example, in comparison to the poor drug. Another example, tramadol hydrochloride, or tramadol by itself, is a very important API. It has two chiral centers, and well, this is marked as the salt. Problem is, you need a high dosage of this drug. see it here, up to nearly 200 milligram every 4-6 hours. So you will, it's clear, you will see side effects. On the other side, you can try to get co-crystals with a psilocybe, no? This is also a very interesting drug and has also poor or bad properties. In this case, it is really slow. It shows a very slow dissolution. Yes. So in one case, you need a high dosage. In the second case, poor solubility. Both together is mixing co-crystals. And once again, this is a ionic co-crystal. What you have is safety of this compound here. So you need lower dosage, and in the same time, simultaneously, you see a higher bioavailability of a second drug. Okay? Nice effect. Okay. Another example, looking to stability. If you're looking here to valproic acid, yes, it is a liquid at room temperature. Well, liquids are generally not the optimized form of a drug. No. In general, we try to get a solid. It's much more easier to handle, and to dose, and so on and so on. Well, on the other side, if you look to the salts of valproic acid, well, for example, calcium has high toxic effect, and the sodium valproate, for example, is hygroscopic and has a high melting point. So the trick is a mixture of a salt and a free acid. Alternative solid form, sodium, so the salt with the acid, and by cooling this mixture from acetone solution, you get ionic co-crystal. And here are the properties, show the properties of this ionic co-crystal. We are looking to a relative humidity test. As I said, the sodium salt is hygroscopic, yes, high melting point. And here, so the salt, sodium valproate, gained around about 25% weight, and the ionic co-crystal, free acid with the salt together, no weight gain. So we have a higher stability of this drug, this ionic co-crystal drug. Or looking to bioavailability and stability. In general, in this case we are talking about lithium salts. Lithium by itself is very sensitive and very useful drug for bipolar disorder, and well, this is really limited to lithium salts, no? So only drug. No? The problem is that lithium salts have a low brain bioavailability and physical stability. Well, trick is, once again, ionic co-crystal, for example, lithium salicylate, proline, yes, and was very nicely shown in the studies of rats. Yeah? This was no problem for the border, for brain border, blood-brain border. Yeah? And another point is we have a much longer lifetime of a lithium concentration after, for example, 48 hours. You see it here, no? Because it's extended for 24 hours post. Yes, or it's not only limited for this proline ionic co-crystal, for example, ionic co-crystal of lithium chloride with glucose, is also much more stable in comparison to lithium chloride by itself. Okay, this is only a presentation of some ionic co-crystal and their usage in pharmaceutical applications. In general, talking about crystal engineering, we are talking about non-covalent interactions, and you see once again the increasing interest in this field. For example, last year, 2019, was the first international conference on non-covalent interactions. As you see, the chemistry of essential is expected to largely involve non-covalent interaction. It is timely to establish a general regular series of international conferences on non-covalent interaction. And it's not only sophisticated theories, it's only, you see it here, the highlight the role of non-covalent interaction, synthesis, catalysis, crystal engineering, molecular recognition, medicine, chemistry, biology, material science, electrochemical, and so on and so on. Well, okay, where's a list of some interesting contribution regarding non-covalent interaction, and I will only show you some remarkable interactions, some remarkable contribution, which are not handling all this typical strong hydrogen or halogen bonding. First is dipole-dipole interaction. In this case, we are talking here of CO double bonds, two neighboring CO double bond. And if you look to the energy of such types, you will see, well, this is a broad range. Okay, 5 kilojoule is not so much, but on the other side, 50 kilojoule, that's schon high energy. And this is very important. You will see it very often in the case of aggregation proteins. Yes, when it's comparative with a strange with hydrogen bond. You can see, so in general, you can decide between, distinguish between three categories. You see it here. So we are looking to CO groups, neighboring groups, two CO groups, or also CO and SO groups, neighboring groups. You will see type 1 here, this case. Here there's an orthogonal, and here you can say the parallel orientation, on here side on, something like this. Now what you see is, in the case of carbonyl examples, when you see the mostly, you will see something like this here, the parallel orientation. Yeah. And in the case of CO, SO, when you see mostly this side-on configuration. And one example here of a huge co-crystal, huge molecules, I would say, co-crystal of huge molecules. Here you see it here, and here are the interaction. Yeah, here is one group, yes. And then here's the second group with the SO group, and here's a CO group. No? See here the interaction, CO, SO, for example, and also here with this SO and C. These are dipole interaction. If you're going on from CO going to sulfur, we should talk about sulfur-sulfur interaction and thinking about if you can see general assignment to one typical arrangement, molecular arrangement or aggregation behavior. And there's very a nice contribution where I looked to the arrangement of such sulfur-sulfur interactions, yes, sulfur-sulfur interaction. And the question was, is it something like this here? Is it a parallel orientation, or do we have, I don't know, orthogonal orientation, and so on and so on. And what we see very clearly is with around about 70% of all pairs, yes, contact pairs, 200 pairs, 70% were observed, were found with parallel orientation. And when we said, okay, have a look on the energies, try to calculate what should be the preferred geometry, yes, and we make quantum chemical calculation. Once again, here is a parallel orientation, parallel, and so on. And this is what we see is exactly here the B type, no? And from the theoretical calculation, so it's claimed out very nicely that with here orientation E should be the preferred orientation. And well, this is exactly what we would expect if we would say that S-sulfur interaction is comparable with a halogen bonding. In this case, you would say, okay, we have here sigma hole, yes, and interact with a negative electronegative belt of a neighboring sulfur. No? Theoretical calculation, but look in the practice, you will see type B, mostly you will see. Going on, talking about chalcogen bonding, so talking about bonding of elements in the sixth group, no? And in general, if you talk about this class, you can directly compare with bonding with halogen bonding. This is a halogen bond, you know it, we have talked about, and this is chalcogen bond, depends on the configuration here, the central chalcogen and the number of the substituents, no? Okay. Sometimes you will see chalcogen bonds are comparable with hydrogen bonds, no? But in general they are really weak bond. No? But comparable, we will see there are several points which are comparable with halogen bonding. No? So you see, you remember the sigma hole depends in the case of a halogen bonding of an element, the halogen. The iodine atom substituents has the biggest sigma hole. Yes, and exactly the same is in the case of chalcogens. This is the ranking tellurium, selenium, sulfur, oxygen. So, and this is okay, have a look here. This is the location of the sigma hole. And in the case here of the sigma hole in the chalcogen, when you see this in the direction here of a chalcogen carbon bond. No? Sigma holes are localized on the axis of the covalent bond. So on the opposite of the substituents. No? In this case or in this case. No? And well, this is, if you have such a configuration, then you can use it in the same manner like halogen bonding. No? Looking is the negative electronegative belt of a neighboring bonding in a near environment and so on. No? And if you look in, for example, crystal structure of a general molecular aggregation in proteins, we very often see that the sulfur atoms are exactly directed in such way. So this is a classification of a different chalcogen bonding. This is comparable with hydrogen bond. We have a negative charge assisted chalcogen bond, you see it here, We have a donor, negative donor, or on the other side a positive calculane region. You have a neutral species and the resonance-assisted calculane bonds. All these types you will find in the literature. Good. Once again, comparable with halogen bonds. Yeah. You have a directionality like hydrogen bond, like halogen bonding. Yes. On the opposite side of the substituents. And you see very often this is also comparable with hydrogen bond around about 180 degrees. And comparable with halogen bond, this type of bonding intermolecular interactions is tunable by the donor substituents or tunable by substitution of a calculane atom by, for example, more heavier atom in this group. What you see is an hydrophobicity, this is of hydrophobic in comparison to hydrogen bonds, yes. And we see it very nicely in this case here, multiplicity, yeah. Depending on the valence, you can get di, tetra, hexavalence, multiple calculane bonds. You see it here in the case of tellurium. In this case, this is the distance, van der Waals distance, for around about a little bit higher than 4 angstrom. You see the distance definitely below. Now, there's another way how you can tune calculane bonding, beside variation of a substituent, beside variation of a donor or a calculane atom. You can tune it by using fluent substituents. You remember, we talk about how you can use fluent substituents in crystal engineering. You have seen that fluent substituents increase the acidity of neighboring hydrogen bond, which could be used by design crystal structure. Yes, you remember? Have a look on hydrogen bonding. Okay, now in this case what we are doing is, if we're looking for example surface electrostatic potentials, and what we see it here. Yeah? This is here fluorine substituted sulfur and selenium, and with the fluorine atoms here, the sulfur and selenium. What we see it here, the red region here, areas, with our positive potentials. So we increase the sigma hole. Can increase the sigma hole of a calculane atoms. Well, question now, is this useful in crystal engineering? We can first check it by your own. Have a look in the crystal structure database, looking for intermolecular interaction of sulfur with neighboring sulfur or selenium, tellurium. You can stop it here and continue. So let's continue. Here is tetrafluordisulfur-ethane. If you look to the electrostatic potential map, it's exactly that's what we would expect. Comparable here. We see here sigma holes. For a region with strongly positive electrostatic potential, which might initially be interpreted as sulfur sigma holes. and you look to the crystal structure, and you see very nice, you can see the interaction of a negative fluorine, they are negative, no? The neighboring atoms, interaction here with the sulfur of its ring systems. And the angle is exactly what we would expect it, around about 155, 160 degree, and only slightly shorter contact in comparison to van der Waals radii. Okay, that means you have attractive interaction, you can see it, between the positive sulfur atoms and the negative fluorines, the neighboring molecules. Switching the topic again. Additives control crystal design. What does it mean? Remember, we talk about, I presented some slides about aspirin. Yes, this was the crystal structure, exactly I have shown you this picture, and we have seen that here in this hole is deposit and dopant, aspirin anhydride. And I have shown you how you can control polymorphic behavior by adding an additive in the solution. Remember, if you crystallize fluorouracil, you will normally get form 1, and normally you will get only form 2 if you crystallize in dry nitromethane, or you crystallize this compound in the presence of really 10% nicotine amide and technical methanol, when you will also get form 2. So in both cases we are talking about impurities. Yes. And well, this field, crystal engineering, is very interesting. Let's have a short look in this field. So generally we are talking about the crystallization process. The end is a solid, and the process starts in solution, in supersaturated solution. Pünktchen, 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 point, 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 error, and the end as a crystal. We talk about that we can tune the crystallization process by adding seeds in the metastable zone. Yeah. Addition of nuclei of desired solid with pre-critical size. And this is important to reproduce a quality of a batch. Yes. And mostly you will get exactly the polymorph or form of the seeds. No? So this is called heterogeneous nucleation, adding a seed, and this is regarded on the background as the nucleation surface on the seeds. This is thermodynamically more favorable, less energy is required in comparison to additive induced crystallization. Additive controlled crystallization is a homogeneous crystal nucleation. So additives mostly are structurally similar to the product. Yeah? And in this case you can explain the crystallization by absorption of an additive on the crystal surface. Yeah? This can inhibit crystal grow and can start new alternate crystal grow process. Well, have a look. This is an API, and two forms are well known. Form A is metastable and form B is thermodynamic stable. If we crystallize now this API in the presence of the additives, and these additives are structurally very similar to the API, the difference only here the red marked residues. Yes. When you will see that the additive has an influence on the crystallization, what you see is that the additive suppressed the transformation of a metastable crystal and the thermodynamic stable form. Well, this is an extremely short summary of this contribution. Have a look in this contribution. It's very interesting because they analyze and investigate exactly the profiles of a crystallization procedure. They analyze, characterize the amount of the additives in the product and so on. Yes, but in this case now only for the short message, you can use structurally related additives to inhibit transformation processes. Another example shown by Davy, the group of Davy, big guy, and he introduced tailor-made inhibitors. Okay, what is it? The black units, part of a crystal structure, crystal packing, and you see the green one. This is a cap. So it cannot go on in this direction. This is a cap. No? Inhibitor of a crystal grow in this direction. Tailor-made inhibitors. And as here, if this additive is on the top, we have a motive stopper inhibitor. You see it here. So in this direction, so it cannot go in this direction, it cannot go here on the top. And he has shown very nicely in a study of the crystallization of benzamide, looking to the polymorphism of benzamide in the presence of an additive. You see it here. So it's similar, but not exactly the same. And here you see it, tailor-made inhibitor. Okay, yeah, you see it here. And also you see it here, motive stopper inhibitor. And the group of Davy could show very nicely that the crystal grow in one direction could be inhibited, and in the same moment the crystal grow in another direction, depending on the cell axis and so on. Very nicely. Next example, polymorphism of trinitrobenzene. First of all, this additive induced polymorphism is known since a long time. This is a model how to explain it. This is orientation in a centrosymmetric crystal structure. Yes, it's always an inversion center here, inversion center. See it here. So, and if you have an additive, the growth inhibit, this is the additive here, it's inhibit in this direction, you see it here, and in this direction, both directions. This is the situation in polar crystal structure, yes? Polar crystal structure have no inversion center, and in this case, one of the axes here is inhibit. One side is only inhibit. It can go in this direction, no problem. And this model were used to looking for the polymorphism trinitrobenzene. They crystallize trinitrobenzene in the presence of this unit. And if you read the contribution, the aim was to get co-crystals. But what I get is a new form. They get a new form of PBCA. And if you look to the crystal structure, we very nicely see that exactly this model fits very good. If you look at the crystal structure very nicely, you can see that exactly one line, yes, one direction is inhibited. Next example, looking to a polymorphism of acridine. Well, several polymorphs are well known from acridine. So, the authors, group of Wolf, crystallized acridine in the presence of this carboxylic acid. These are the co-crystal I get, co-crystals. Have a look on the crystal packing. This is the layer of acids, another layer of acids. Between two layers you see the orientation of acridine. Yes, you see here the orientation up, down, up, down, up, down, and always interacts with acridine. This is a co-crystal. Okay, when they said the hypothesis was, okay, let's use this orientation, the co-crystal, to obtain a new polymorph of acridine. Yes, so they crystallize acridine in the present small amount, not small amount, less amount of this acid, no? And successfully, I got two new polymorphs of acridine because there was a pre-orientation. Yes, a pre-orientation based of interaction of acridine molecules with carboxylic acid. Pre-organized acridine syntons in a supersatural phase prior to crystallize. That's it. As I said, crystal engineering, broad field, different techniques, different parameters, different energies, different bonding can be used to design desired crystals.